What about this though? Because I thought a way we could actually transition that is on that whole topic of like broadcast and entertainment. I actually think this is an area that's really misunderstood with actually the content that you're watching right now. If you're a fan, my content, because I saw recently there was this whole topic. Right, I've heard it happen many times in the last few years. It goes like this, Crumbs. People go like, "Oh, I don't really like Thorin," or insert anyone. Thorin, Dom, Monty, fucking who else is on the list? LS, you know all the names. Veteran when he was doing shit. They go, "I don't like X," but then what they basically says, "But I really love Y," and Y in this case is their content. So what the person's sort of saying is, something about you triggers me, or something you've said triggers me, but I do sort of like what you do. I just wish it wasn't you who did it, but I still want the outcome to be the same. I know it sounds really complicated, but I'm trying to do my best to actually understand their perspective here, right? The problem is this, Crumbs. This is what I think a lot of them don't understand, because it's kind of like the topic about entertainment versus, you know, what people claim they want. Like, oh, I want the hardest hardcore game, right? The problem is this. The reason people have like the controversial statements on my shows or the really interesting side topic is precisely because of like the personality that I'm putting up across on camera, the sometimes aggressive, abrasive nature I have. Like, I'm sure some of people's favourite moments, if they don't like me, is when I get donked on by a guest who, you know, wrecked me on something. Well, they wouldn't do that if I was super polite to them, would they? If I was just like, "What do you think about this?" Like, they'd be super polite in return. Like, the only reason they'll ever come with any fire is because I put a bit of spice myself. I poke the bear, don't I? I'm the little kid at the fucking zoo, sticking my tongue out at the tiger, and then if the tiger runs over, rips my head off. You all laugh, don't you? Well, maybe not in that case. That's maybe some old school humour on that one. I grew up with Faces of Death, Crumbs. What can I tell you? Like, I'm not really in touch with the modern generation. What do you think of that, though? Because I've always found that really weird. Because, like, I can talk. By the way, I'll say this at the front. I totally understand not liking me. Like, I'm a pretty obnoxious individual. I'm very much like fucking, I'm one of those Marmite guys, aren't I? You either love it or you fucking hate it. I get that part. But like, the one part I don't get is why people are confused that I'm like one of the few people who has this type of content, because there are real options. Just the option is if you want people who are sort of more polite and they're more buttoned up, that you already have that. That's all the broadcasts. That's like the LCS broadcast. That's Travis's content. That's, you know, there's a lot of that shit out there. What I'm puzzled by is why people think like you can have you can sort of like put different inputs in, but get different outputs.
I mean, that's just a problem that goes way beyond esports, right? But I think in your case, you do have a polarizing persona that people just can't seem to separate or even like accept that one precedes the other. Like, you're just not gonna get the content without what you're doing. So I think that people want their cake. They want to eat it too. And I mean, I like it. And honestly, when in 2016, before I left to Korea, I was even looking to your videos as some sort of inspiration. I just had the same little overlay, doing little rants there with the title. So I mean, I'm thinking doing that again and seeing if we could just satisfy people's cravings this way, because clearly they want it. They want it. So
what the fuck? Zyrathenia, I didn't expect that reply. Like, it sounds like his reply there was like, "Look, I like your stuff, but actually, I'll make the content that people can watch instead of yours." Like, that sounded like what you said there.
I could never fulfill. I can never fill that niche. You have the ability to never, like, you don't have to answer to anybody, right? That is what allows you to do whatever the fuck you want. So I think that is what people probably aren't even used to, somebody that lives that way. Right, just
I will say it, but
answer to anybody, that you can say whatever, you can make the darkest jokes, have the craziest shit you want, and still nothing will happen to your employment the next day. Most people aren't in that position. Most people don't see people in that position, so it's hard for them to even grasp how to not only behave that way, but how to deal with somebody that can act in that manner, because it feels like it goes against everything they know.
True.
I think one thing you do very well, like, I've tried to be in French that way in the past. It backfires quite a lot. So you need to take praise for doing that for like an extended period of time. But I think you're very good at generating frustration and will of answering you. Like, people that will read your tweets and the way you phrase things like publicly, because most of the people don't even like watch your shows. They just read your tweets.
True.
And you have a very, very good phrasing at triggering people.
Oh, I'm annoying as fuck, aren't I? Yeah.
They want to run at you and shout the hardest they can, like you're wrong, and shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And this is very, very good for one reason, is this generates debates on a consistent basis. So you just create an atmosphere where people come, like when I come to your show, I come to an arena, right? Usually the other guest is my friend. Like we're trying to fight, we're just getting into the arena and try to debate, but you know that they're gonna be harsh topics, they're gonna be hot takes, they're gonna be extreme. Like you're gonna transform the reality into a very like black and white situation where you're gonna try to take the worst parts, or like always the worst side of the stick, and just give the other ones to the fans, try to argue with me. And I think it's very hard for people to understand that these create very good and very interesting talks. But on the other hand, they have to accept the downside, which is, yes, your Twitter generates a little bit of frustration here and there. Yes, even me, sometimes I hear you, I read your takes, and I'm like, man, I think Thorin is like pretty far from the truth, but it's very good because I really want to argue with him right now. And
put it this way,
it's the Mayweather approach, right? It's like people don't know that as like you just need to generate interest, and if people are engaging with it, you don't actually care if they want to just talk shit all the time because you're getting what you want. You're walking all the way to the bank laughing. So as like I think that's what people are missing is that in the same way that they can complain about the way Mayweather fights and all these mock boxing battles and say these shit should have never happened, but at the same time buy the pay-per-view, fucking watch every single piece of content just to shit on it. It's the same thing that one takes advantage of in League. It's like, hey, you want to talk shit all the time, but you want to talk shit so much that you're signed up to my Patreon in order to get first access to what I am saying, in order to shit talk it sooner than anybody else. You got to hats off to that, because the blindness that these people have is just something at next level.
Oh, but don't worry, Zabatine. In line with what you were saying, one of my absolute favourites of those like little YouTube idents I have, like obviously I have one with Crumbs, where like the beginning of the video, like, what are you doing? It's just Orange Channel. When I have those with like famous people, one of my favourites is the one that Perks made. Because what people don't know is I almost never tell people what to say in those. I just tell them like, look, make a funny one, and if you can, like, you can burn me or burn yourself or whatever. Like the only time, occasionally, if someone was like, I really can't think of anything, I like recommended a theme. But like obviously Perks came up with that himself. His one was he basically just said like, sometimes I do think he's talking like, complete bullshit, but I also think sometimes it's funny or interesting. He phrased it the best way possible. Yeah, so obviously there's all the options out there, but actually I would make this, by the way, I was talking from my perspective, but you can make this a topic that's way bigger than me, because I actually think this is a trend in League of Legends, specifically a lot more than my home game of CSGO, because since in CSGO, the developer of the game, Valve, doesn't really have like direct input. Like they don't actually even tell tournaments like you can hire this person or don't hire the person. Basically, unless you do something like borderline criminal, like actually cheat in the game, Valve just leaves everyone to do whatever they're going to do. So except for that one weird case where like fucking Gabe Newell just fired Too Good that like major years ago. Aside from that one weird one, which I've even heard from Valve employees, like apparently like even they didn't know that was happening. That really was how it was. One day they themselves woke up and just saw on Reddit like, oh, apparently Gabe Newell just fired Too Good. So anyway, aside from that though, I feel like in League of Legends as a game, I get the same trend, and it's about all the names I listed before. People say the same thing about LS, like, oh, I like his content, I like the discussions, but like, oh, he's too abrasive. What they basically imply is there's a way to like, as you say, Crumbs, have your cake and eat it. Like have things exactly how you want it, but then have nothing irritate you about it. And I actually think in League in general, I don't think people get this. One of the reasons I love the content of Dom and LS and Monty and fucking all these names is because they give me something I don't get on a Riot broadcast. Like, in fact, with the choices Riot makes in terms of how they want to present themselves as incredibly professional sheen and don't offend people and sort of be a bit safe with people's feelings, that almost, I always say, it almost necessitates having an alternative, because there's always going to be fans. I mean, listen, especially a lot of like gamers 10 years ago were way edgier than they were now. There's always going to be a type of gamer that wants like a bit darker humor or something. And as you say, Crumbs, like, certain people, some of the other ones less so, but in my particular case, that ain't a coincidence, by the way, mate. I've purposely navigated my career the last sort of like 6-7 years to be that there can't be the one guy who goes, yeah, I didn't like that joke, you fired. Like, I've gone out my way not to let that happen. Most people in the industry, it makes perfect sense. You can't do that. Like, even to some degree, I know people won't get this, but even people like LS and Dom can't actually say everything they want. I mean, there's obvious examples, like Dom has his connection with Cloud9, LS has a connection with T1. Certain things will always be off the table. But as a result, unfortunately, if you like the traditional broadcasts, there will always be an alternative broadcast that can say those things. They always will go hand in hand.
you have to have that hand in hand, and that polarization is something I've even benefited from. I don't think I would have actually been in the position I was in if I didn't get the smarts and dumbs constant every single time that I was on any stream or pretty much any piece of content.
Right.
Just because people, if they like it, they have something to do. If they don't like it, they've got something to do as well. So you actually get to have both. It's the only way to actually interact with everyone. You can't satisfy everyone, but you can get interaction from everyone if you actually have something that they can like and something that they can dislike at the same time. So it actually is the largest net that you can cast for an audience. So I think that those are the figures that end up having the most influence, just the ones that are the most polarizing.
And I think on top of that, there's kind of the modern trend of trying to erase not erase, but minimize anything that's not the mainstream. Like people really behave by streams of social media activity topics. Like there's kind of a very set way of doing things, and people kind of basically hate anything that's different until they like it. So
Sure.
I mean, I feel like it's very like natural for people within the industry to question the way information should be transferred and try to bring their own way of doing so. And I think that especially because League is a very soft game and Riot has this player-first culture that's very good for what they're doing, it has softened a lot the whole environment and the way people talk about like the game in general. So I think it's very positive as a whole that some people dare, I would say, to bring some contrast into it. And obviously, because people are, especially from the League industry, are not used to it, they're gonna just hate it by nature because it's just different. But if you were asking, like, if your shows are too controversial to Gears of War specialist, it would say that it's pretty tame, to be honest.
True. Yeah. True.
So it really depends on the game. Just League is probably the softest esports out there. So.
What's happening in Gears? What's happening in Gears?
Basically, it's like COD on steroids. They're just all pros and stuff. Yeah, exactly. So they'd all be just flaming all the time, I'm sure is what you mean. I get the reference. Like, I have a question, though, then. I'll make this like a last topic on this one before we move on and start going to the end of the show. Right, what about this? Sabatine, when you said earlier that you actually, on the French broadcast, sort of like, as you implied you maybe flamed people or gave like harsh criticism or something. But as you said, like, you could only sort of do it in like spells, because eventually it just sucks having a million people tell you to kill yourself or that you fucking suck or whatever. Everyone knows that, right? Obviously, both of you have been people who've been on broadcasts, have been criticised. How do you find that experience? How do you handle it? Because there's the things, Albertine. I'll give you a quick example. Back in the day, I've had a bunch of people where they've told me, like, I thought people exaggerated what your Twitter was like, but when you retweeted my tweet about this particular controversial topic, and I got all the replies, and you know on Twitter you can see if it says like at Thorin as well, it means they're the person that came from my retweet. They were like, when I see all the replies, I'm like, shit, is that what it's like to be you for a day? Because, like, you know, like, if I've retweeted some edgy topic, obviously they get all the fucking haters that would come on my tweets, right? There's a part that people don't understand, I've noticed, is they think, because obviously if you're getting to be the one who critiques someone, you're the big bad guy, getting to be mean and stuff. A lot of people don't realise it is a mental strain, the backlash that comes, right? It isn't just like, you don't just go to sleep and go, oh, well, whatever, I just made my comments so I can sleep safely. Like, what was it been like for you, Zabdi? It doesn't seem like it's your wheelhouse, mate, so it must have been harsh. I
mean, for me, it has never been a problem. I grew up having controversial takes on pretty much everything, and I always enjoyed creating debate and stuff. I'm not. It's just when I switched to being a coach, you know, you can't be like, because you have to kind of keep this proximity with the player base and all the stuff and stuff. And I wanted to shift my personality around, like being like closer to the reality, which is always less exciting than the controversial take. So I've just decided to focus more on like trying to say the truth the way I see it in the most complex version, instead of going with like cliches and memes that trigger the audience and generate this kind of anger but enthusiasm about what I was saying all the time. So I'm just working with less hot takes nowadays. But back in the day, I never cared, because for me it was fueling me to do even more. You know, I was like, oh, I have so many people that hate me and like DM me telling me like I'm so wrong and stuff like that. Tomorrow I'm gonna get even hotter take to make sure like they didn't have like they're gonna get like the because you know, this is the thing is like they tune in to watch the game and then they just go into the DM, and then I'm like, wait for tomorrow, they're gonna be even more. Like, for instance, I was shit talking Fnatic, and the guy's gonna like, never shit talk Fnatic. I'm like, tomorrow I'm casting the game, man. I'm making sure I'm casting the game. Just please tune in. And then people just hate you, but that's just funny. I feel like it's very funny to live that way. until it becomes like, for you, it probably have, like, cross the line of like death threats and stuff like this, and then it's just not fun anymore. And that's why I respect you for that.
What do you think, Crumbs? Here's the thing: you always give off the perception. I'll say, like, you don't give a fuck. Like, you seem like you're super chill, but does it get to you ever? Because I will say, I used to be the same way, like, let's say, like 5 years ago. Like, I used to be really good at trolling people and not giving a fuck what they said. But then again, as Zabatine says, it depends on what, like, level of danger we're at in here. Once it got to that people, like, legitimately on some level might try to murder me over what they think my politics are, stop being a bit funny then, you know. It wasn't like, I couldn't really roll with those punches as much. So how do you handle it, Crumbs? You seem like you don't get affected by it. Is that true?
Well, sorry, I couldn't hear that last bit.
Do you actually not get affected by, like, if you make a comment, for example, and people don't like your comment, or you criticize a team too harsh, can you handle the backlash or the response that you get from people?
Yeah, I mean, if it's something, the only times that it ever gets to me is if a fan happens to land upon something that they are very perceptive upon that I currently had worked on. And so if that happens, then I feel like, okay, like this actually was something that I already was thinking about and that it was actually mentioned. And so those are moments that just make me think, okay, you know what? Like, I already had addressed this, but the fact that somebody sees this, like, for something to say in my cast, if I struggled with that and they were able to pick up on the same area that I thought I needed to work on, then that doesn't necessarily get to me in that, oh, they affected me. It's like, oh, I really needed to have actually worked on that before even casting. And so those are moments that get to me. But for the most part, I don't give a shit, because what I always think of is, who are the people saying this? I always just back, who is actually saying this? Who are the people that are addressing me in this? And they're like, okay, I'm the expert, not them. So I don't give a shit. And then on top of that, I'm like, okay, who's the kind of person that has the energy to go and use their time of the day, their precious daily moments, to type on internet to somebody that they don't know that they thought that they ruined their experience of watching an online video game? Like, okay, that's another person that, you know, just scratch off the list of people that are actually going to affect me. So I don't get shit talked by people that I actually respect, that have opinions that I hold valuable. So that has yet to happen. And if that were the case, I don't think I'd be negatively affected. It would be something to reflect upon more. So the biggest thing is just reminding, like, hey, I'm in this position because I have the expertise. I get to decide on things. If they're very perceptive on something that I already suspected, sure, that's fine. But just shit talk for the most part, it's just funny. It's just funny to see people get really mad. There was a long time ago where I made a video saying something like, the European meta is behind. This is some video saying that EU is shit. And then for years, it just was never let up. It was like, this guy, it's terrible. How could he say this? Like, all of Europe just got so pissed off at this. And if anything, that shit's just funny to me. I laugh about that so much when I know how silly it comes from. I remember just on the girlfriend's ruining LCS video, when that shit came out, I'm just laughing all day. I'm just spending the whole day laughing. I kid you not, from start to finish, it's just hilarious to me to see the reactions of all sorts, whether it's upset or enjoyment, it doesn't matter. It's just very funny. So I just figure, why not just laugh about it? Because it doesn't seem like it hurts anybody.
By the way, that's an example right there, Zabatine, of a Thorin style phrasing. Because if you don't know, the video he's referring to, where the title was Girlfriends Are Ruining the LCS. Here's the thing. Technically, his title wasn't incorrect, but he meant in the context of, like, you know, the way all the guys are behaving and all the stupid shit they do. But obviously, you see the title, and you can imagine every sort of person is going to react super emotionally strong to that title. Like, whether they agree, disagree, whether they're a woman or a man. Like, everyone, like that. Crumbs did a good job on that one. I'll give him like 8 Thorins out of 10 on that one.
I think the key actually in hindsight is actually to come up with a title that allows you, that actually the first response is, if you don't watch the video, you're gonna hate it.
Yes.
And so it actually allows the people to just immediately like, oh, this sucks, and then they didn't watch it, and then, you know, you're like, okay, you actually just wanted to immediately comment on the title. And then if you watch the whole thing, then you're like, okay, I get it. So the initial thing has to be something that people say, I hate this, without having watched it.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.